Okay, so I'm going to get started with laying out this drawing. Mine's a little bit different than yours in all likelihood. I downloaded this collage from the artist Stanek Jazlowick. I'll post that on my picture or on this assignment. I did my grid lines slightly different just because I made a boo-boo when I was doing these, and you can see that this line's a boo-boo also. So you can see my grid lines. I accidentally picked up my 8B pencil and I made that line, and you can see the difference between that. Corrected myself and used my HB pencil and did this line here. I want your lines as light as possible. As you, I hope you started to learn in your sketchbooks that these different materials have different properties. We're using pencils today, and the 8B is going to make your darkest lines, your darkest values. Your HB should make your lightest values, but it also is related to your touch, how hard you're pressing, so you need to be aware of that. Also, the graphite smudges on the paper very, very easily, which is fine, but you, in order to control that sometimes, like if you're drawing up here, you might take another piece of paper and lay it over the top as you draw up there, so that you don't smudge back here by putting your hand down. So that's some kind of layout things. I'm going to look at my composition. So there's actually three elements in my composition. There's this eye right here, the face, and the eye's been cut out, and these close-ups of fingertips have been put into the collage to make them look like they're literally coming out of the eye. So I'm going to use these grid lines to transfer my design onto this piece of paper. I'm going to start out by putting the design on my piece of paper in very light tone values throughout the entire composition, so I could see the whole composition before I start to lay in my values. So this, my skin texture, which I want to get to, there's some really subtle things going on here. But I'm going to start in the easiest part of my composition, where I've got a lot of simple shapes that I can interact with, like these shapes here and these shapes here, that arc and that arc, and then these shapes coming down, as opposed to getting into the detail of these wrinkles and the skin tone, which I'm going to get to. I'm going to start in the simplest part first, the central part. I'm going to look at very simple shapes initially, and I'm going to kind of measure and figure out where these things are coming. So right here I can see where this line intersects with the kind of the finger here, and how this angle starts to move away, and in relationship to this line, how the top of this knuckle starts to form. So I'll transfer that to here. I believe that probably is coming right about there, that intersection there. The top of the finger is going to be about a little more halfway down of this space. So I'm going to put it right about there, and then I'm just going to start to connect some of these spaces and drawings. Now, how far does this come down? See how I can use this as a guideline and as a reference? It probably comes down to about right there. So that kind of tells me how far or how thick this line should be right here. Actually, the thickness would relate to the finger in actuality. And then I'm going to, how far does this start to come down? Well, if I look at the tip of the finger here and the fingernail, see how I could estimate where it is in relationship to that intersection right there, which I'll make. I'm not looking at the purple, I'm looking at the actual fingertip now. Okay, so I'd say that's right about there. So now I can start to make this line right here, how it curves over midway through the fingertip, and then the fingernail or tip is going to be right about there. And I can start to draw these lines with a little bit more confidence using this grid as a pattern. And you can see how right there, actually this point right here, is the other part of the knuckle, and we can see how close it stays to this grid line right here as we draw up, and as we continue to come up here. And now I could see where this intersects with the fingernail, which would be right about there. So let's draw that in. There you see that fingernail right there. Now we've got the roundness of that fingernail right here. And it starts to come in at an angle. If I get things wrong, I'll just erase. I should be drawing with a light touch. So I have that line there, I have this line there. Now I want to look at, I could start to look at this right here, and I could see where this knuckle comes in relationship to this line right here. And see how it's about halfway? So I could take half of this line, which takes me to about right there, and then that's this line right there, which is starting to come over like that and angle down. Okay, and then as I continue down here, I could see this is the outline of where the eye was cut out. That sounds pretty grim and gruesome, doesn't it? And so I could see where it intersects right here, which would be right about there. So I could start to estimate what that curve is doing. And then I could see where that curve comes into here, which is, see how, where it is in relationship to the fingernail there, which I would make to be right about here. So I can continue this curve like that. So I got the kind of the initial part of this I'm trying to include in here. So now as I go up here and look, I could see that the next fingernail is coming very close to my grid line here. So the next fingernail goes all the way up to here, so in relationship to there. And then we can look at the distance from here. So I would say it begins like somewhere right about there, because I got to give space for my fingertip right there. So the fingertip's going to come in right about here. Starts to come up. And then this is going to start to begin to form the top of the fingernail here. And see how the fingertip extends beyond the fingernail here. So this fingernail comes in, and then the tip of the finger extends down. And then we can start to draw that as it comes back here. Now I'll include in this fingernail, and I could see how far down it goes in relationship to this fingertip. So this fingertip comes to here, this fingertip should come to about there. And it's okay to kind of give yourself these guidelines to kind of include in on this drawing, because your drawing is going to be made up of detail. It's going to be trying to get the proportions that you have in your initial composition. And then you're going to try to draw these shapes in proportion. Now this finger has a little bit more distance between it. Like these two fingers are right up against each other. So let me finish out this part of it right here. See how this finger actually overlaps and becomes, or overlaps onto this line here. A little bit, maybe not quite that much, and that comes down. And right at the intersection here, it starts to bend over and starts to become that knuckle, which is going to come over something like that. Maybe not quite that far. It's okay to, oh, that's why it actually comes and stops, and then that starts to become the other finger right there. Okay, so the other finger starts to form about here. See how this finger comes at an angle? We're seeing more of this upper knuckle here at a different angle. Then it starts to come around to be the upper part of the knuckle right here. So let's continue this down here. So it continues down. Now let's look at where this stops in relation to, see, this is the fingertip, and we can use this fingernail, and it stops right about there. Let's see where I am. So it stops right about there. So this is actually the tip. All right, let me make sure I'm doing it. Okay, so if we do a vertical, it's going to stop there. So vertical, okay, yeah, so vertical. By vertical, I mean if we keep it going like this, okay. So you can see where the fingernail stops right about there. So let's pull up these little lines I made a voodoo on. So you can see how I'm kind of initially laying out this composition, trying to draw very lightly. It's okay if I make mistakes, because light lines come out much easier than dark lines, or you're able to erase them out much easier than light lines. Okay, so about right here we could see where the corner of this eye transitions into here, and I could see the corner of the eye right there, which would be right here. And so let's lay that in. And then the corner of the eye is going to come up here, okay, and start to come up. We can see how far it comes up in relationship to this corner right here. You see where it stops right here, because this is kind of the eyelash, even though I got this purple line right there. So I would say it comes up, this point right here would be right about here. So see how that gives me a really nice couple points to connect. Okay. And then I can start to draw in these kind of mangled eyelashes right there. Okay, so what I'm looking at here is, now I'm going to start just to kind of finish out this little center section here. Again, I'm going to see where this intersects this line right here, which is just above the midway point, which would be kind of like right there. Okay. Now I could start to actually lay in a little bit of value here, just to tell me that this negative space is actually closed off here. Not much. I'm just gonna, you know, everything's going to eventually get darker, but this probably is just more for my mental note-taking as to what's happening as I start to look at my composition. So this is the knuckle right here, which now it's going to start to, see how it changes angles once it crosses that line, and it starts to come back down like this. And then this starts to come over here like that. And then here's this line here. We can see how the fingernail intersects with that line right there, which is right about here. And how far up it comes, and how far below that line it starts to go, and then this arc. And this arc actually stays above this line here. See that right there? So that tells me that I might need to go a little further before I bring that over. And then this is the end of the fingernail there. And then this is the fingertip extending beyond here. And then the second fingertip here. So let's finish off this finger right here. Something like that. And then this next finger tip is going to start to come here. The fingernail starts to take over. right there. And see how it rounds over and it ends right when it intersects the line right there, or the roundness, the tip of it. So let's bring this into this little moon area here. Now I'm not in a hurry. I want you to really take time with what these lines look like using measurements. Okay, like when I start to now draw where this knuckle's going to be, I can see how close it comes to this mark right here. So it comes like right there. And I could actually draw this before I connect these lines, because it will help me to connect these lines, because I have a greater assurance of what this looks like rather than what it starts to look like from down there up. Because I've got more things to measure against. And see how I'm stopping this line here? Because this is going to start to be this, and you see how they're matching up, because I was able to use the center axis point as a way to line things up. Let's connect those lines there. Now let's start to bring this over and how it connects up here. So now I can start to correct this. And then where this is in relationship to this, we could see that if we draw, okay, let's do a vertical, okay, like a vertical, we can see, so a vertical is going to be parallel to this. We can see that it comes right to the nail bed right there. So if we extend a vertical down from here, we can see that that's where the fingernail is going to end for this right there. So it end right about there, which gives the round tip of the fingernail coming around like this, which gives us a place. Now here's the end of the finger right there, right here. And it gives us a place to draw this line and start to draw that line there, which connects up with that there. So this central part of our composition, this kind of, see how it kind of looks like the Batman shape, this thing right here? I could start to sketch that value in just very lightly, and it starts to give me the central part of this composition. Something that I could start to build the rest of the drawing off of. Now, wherever you choose to build or start to build out your drawing, that's fine, that's your choice. Look for something easy, something recognizable, something where you can go shape against shape to start to draw and build this out, and do careful measuring of what you're going to be drawing so that it starts to look more, well, it's very much akin to like focusing a camera lens, an old camera where you have to adjust it back and forth. It takes time to do that. So this drawing is going to come to resolution, or is going to be finished over the course of a few hours, not right away, because I've just got this. I've got a whole lot of detail to fill in here on mine, along with shading. Now that's something else I want to get to on this. So you have your collage over here, which I could tell from this, this was made out of 3 different photographs, obviously. It has 3 different light sources, this does. These fingers are lit with different light, like the light coming onto these fingertips is coming from this direction. The light coming onto these fingertips is coming from this direction, because you're using a whole bunch of reference photos. I want you to pretend that the light is coming from a single direction, no matter what this looks like. Like, say I might pretend that the light is coming from this direction, Later on in the drawing, if the light is coming from this direction, it means that the shadows are coming from this direction. It means that just as the shadows are on this side of these fingers, that's if I'm drawing it like that, like the light's coming from here, the shadow would be on these side of these fingers, on this side of these fingers, here, and then the light would be on this side, this side, this side, this side, this side. You see how they're individual shapes, and so the light travels over those rounded shapes. So you're going to interpret a light source onto this drawing, a consistent light source. That's why I want these to be, you're going to start out with very light values on these. So I'm going to look at this right here for a minute here, which this line is really throwing me off. This was my mistake line. So I got to come back to, oh no, yeah, this was my mistake line. This is the line I should be using. So I'm going to see what is happening right here, and I can see this kind of dark crease is kind of happening here. That almost intersects this. Just going to lay a little bit of value down there so I can start to see that. And I've got this dark shape here. Got a little bit of this coming in here. Got that. Now I'm seeing where this shape comes in. See this triangle right here? That's what I just drew right here, this triangle. Okay, and that relates to, that starts to connect back here. And this has a value to it also. Not dark, I'm just laying it in so I can start to see where these things are belonging. Okay, so I'm going to build this up longer, but I want you to see, and I'll make other videos of how to, as this gets darker. But before you go any darker than what it is right now, I want the whole thing filled out. Now you should have more shapes to be interactive with than I do, but I want you to fill out the whole composition before you put any detail or before you go darker anywhere. This drawing really should take you at least a couple of hours. Okay, so just give yourself some time to do it.